Okay guys, what's going on, Dark Magical community? And welcome back to the channel. Today marks a very big milestone, 100 videos. And I originally had planned that basically I was going to do this very flashy montage style video and kind of go over everything since the beginning, but I actually think I'm going to do this pretty much unedited. I'm going to add in my introduction, opening credits, whatever, and basically tell you guys the story of how I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And how, in a lot of ways, Yu-Gi-Oh! Really saved me. So, I think that's going to be what we talk about today. So, as always, before we get started with this discussion, if you could, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It's what motivated me to get here, to 100 videos to get to you guys. We're about close to 1,200 subscribers, which isn't great growth from, seems like once I got to 1,000, it kind of slowed down, but that's okay, because we're still here. We're still having fun. We're still doing this. Posted a video yesterday. That was like a short video. I was actually at work talking about where I'd been and things of that nature, and basically just haven't had a lot of time to make content lately, but I'm going to change that. We're going to get back into the Edison content in the coming days, so you might see me look this way every so often, but I'm just looking at my computer to make sure we're still recording and that we're still rolling and everything, so you also might see me take a drink of something every so often, or cough, or whatever. This is basically going to be podcast style, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. If you plan on sticking around to the end, I recommend you sit back, put on your headphones, maybe grab a snack, a drink, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. So let's get started on how Yu-Gi-Oh! Saved me. So every Yu-Gi-Oh! Player has a story, and every Yu-Gi-Oh! Player has a beginning. My beginning was basically my cousin Evan, who I still haven't had on the channel, someday maybe, but played Yu-Gi-Oh! And sometimes him and my other cousin would play cards, like at family gatherings, Christmas, Thanksgiving, stuff like that. I knew nothing about it. I had no interest in it. I was never into stuff like that. I was never into Pokemon. Still not into Pokemon. My friends can't believe it, all the nerdy stuff I'm into, but it just kind of bored me. So they'd always invite me to play. I'm sure it was a lot of Summon Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician without tributes, that kind of thing. But they'd always invite me to kind of play, and I would always respectfully decline. But there was a time where I was in the 5th grade. So the cool thing about my school life was the year followed the grade I was in. So 2005, I can remember because I was in the 5th grade, and so forth and so forth. So very cool. That worked out really well. Sorry to anyone that doesn't work for. But it was 2005. It was getting close to the end of the school year, because basically where I went to elementary school, the last few days of school, after you've done your EOG testing, which if you're not familiar with that, it's just the end of grade tests that everyone's required to do. It's like kindergarten through 8th grade, I think, right before high school. After all that was done, you still had about a week of school left, which was just nonsense. Never really understood why they did things that way, but so kids could bring board games, you could bring, anything that you wanted to, a Game Boy, PSP. Does PSP exist? I don't think PSP exists then. It's a little primitive. But you get the point. You could bring anything that you wanted to pass the time by. They have movies. You could go from different classes to other classes to just do whatever you wanted to do. And it was about a week before that started. And I had a friend, his name was also Michael, who was very into Yu-Gi-Oh! We'll touch a little bit more on that later, but basically he had a card at lunch, and they were like flipping it around to each other across the lunch table, and eventually they stopped, and I was like, "Hey, can I have that?" And they're like, "Sure, it's a terrible card, you can have it." And it was Zumbria the Dark. That was the very first Yu-Gi-Oh! Card I ever owned. It doesn't really hold a special place in my heart or anything. But I remember looking at it, and I was like, wow, 2,100 attack points, that's pretty good. And I don't know what the rest of the stuff means. But that's what really got me into Yu-Gi-Oh! And I remember going home that day and calling my cousin, who is basically my brother, has always been, and telling him, hey, I think I'm finally going to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! We can finally start playing. So he was like, okay, awesome. And so actually, I think it was my mom took me to Walmart. When we went grocery shopping, we go grocery shopping, obviously once a week. Most families do. And I got the Spellcaster deck that had like Dark Eradicator, Warlock, stuff like that in it. I always say it comes full circle that I enjoyed playing Dark Magician later in my life, but and I had that. That was my deck. Evan had significantly more cards than me, thousands. He had one of those whole plastic, it was like a baseball card box. It had like 4 rows in the front and 2 in the back. It was full. And then he had like stacks of cards just sitting all around his bedroom. And we would duel like that. Didn't really know what we were doing. But I guess no one does when you first start out. So one thing turned into another. I was never really the kind of kid to bring my cards to school much. But I did end up bringing them one time. Remember I told you about that week where school's basically over and you can just do whatever you want to. I dueled against my other friend Michael, and it was like, I remember it so well because we were sitting at a desk, we were playing back and forth, and there's slowly a crowd of people just starting to watch because, who's going to get sent to the Shadow Realm? Maybe some people wanted to make fun of me and him, but, whatever. I think the majority of them were actually quite interested. But I think we played at 4,000 life, just like the show. And basically, we ended up in a top deck situation. I think I was at 300, and he was at 4,000. This guy was like, he was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Bully. He was the best that there was. And we went back and forth. And I remember drawing Monster Reborn, which there were probably 3 of those in there, or maybe even more. I don't know. We didn't really play with rules. And I remember he had played Obelisk the Tormentor, the blue one from the Game Boy game, which didn't even have an effect. You just made it up. And I reborned his Obelisk and hit him for game, and like everyone just like erupts, like cheering in the background. When I say everyone, it's probably like 8 people. I make it sound like there was like 100 people, but it was probably like 8-9 people watching, because like the supposed like best guy or whatever had lost. And we made so much noise and got so rowdy that there were no more Yu-Gi-Oh cards allowed the rest of that week at school. Yeah, that's a really good memory. Moving past that, at some point or another, I think it would have been the 6th grade, 7th grade, 2006, 2007, was when I heard for the first time that there was actually a card shop where I live. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And somebody told me that you could get 100 cards for $1. At this place, and I was like, oh my god. And so I get home from school and I beg my dad to take me, and it's like a candle shop / cards shop. Never saw them sell any candles, but turned out there were 10-cent cards. They had all these 4-row boxes full of cards. They weren't sorted, whatever. Whatever was in there is 10 cents. So not quite as good of a deal, but I remember my dad would always let me get $5 or $10 worth every time I go, which is a lot of cards when you're a kid. I found myself begging him to take me almost every day, and he would take me a lot. And that's a really good memory that I have with my dad, because he was always really supportive of me playing Yu-Gi-Oh! He didn't understand what it was, but he didn't have to. He understood. So yeah, I'd go, and I remember distinctively one day I just watched an episode of GX, because I'd watched some of the original, but I mainly grew up with GX. And I remember I wanted the Elemental Hero cards, and I wanted the Ojamas. So we found like Avion, Burstinatrix, Sparkman, Clayman, just all the vanillas that had been printed in sets like a couple years back. And I didn't really know how to build a deck, so I just put them in the Spellcaster deck. So I have Elemental Hero Spellcaster. And one of the first times I played my cousin with the Elemental Hero Spellcaster deck, I made the Shining Flare Wingman, which we didn't know you had to have the actual fusion card. We just like said that, hey, that's Shining Flare Wingman, you lose. But we went back and forth on that. We basically played cards at every family gathering, birthday parties. We'd bring our cards to sleepovers. We'd duel in Burger King if we had a sleepover. Anytime, talk on the phone about Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's crazy looking back now. We knew nothing about Yu-Gi-Oh! So, but we start going to locals, and this is where he'd have to tell you because I always get mixed up. It's like 2006, 2007, around the same time period as when I was buying those 10-cent cards because it was at the same shop. But we started going there, and obviously every week we just get metaphorically placed on the pinball table because we just got our backs just absolutely just blown out at this place because we're playing without sleeves. I remember having rubber bands around my cards. I remember having a tin. It was a deck box tin, and it had like a little triangle cut out of the front of it with a piece of plastic, and it had Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey on it. And it opened with a hinge. You could put your cards in it, and it had a string. You could wear it around your neck, and I thought I was so cool having that. But I eventually evolved. I moved up in the world. I played a deck that was centered around Dark Necrofear. Basically, it was not. It did not work. I always forget like what format it was when we first started going there. But I remember Cyber Dragon had just came out. And actually I think Cyber Dragon had just got reprinted out of the tins at that point. And we'd go and we'd just get absolutely just Donkey Konged by Cyber Dragon and all these other cards. And we're just sitting there just trying to make Dark Necrofear work. And I think he was playing Exodia at that time. And it was just a deck of random cards with Exodia in it. That was the WinCon. Because when you're young, you just build whatever. You know, like Exodia. Oh, this is cool. I have to play it in my deck. What if I draw it? I can win. But we did that for a long time. And basically, to my knowledge, we always played the same decks. But it was always something fun. We had locals every Friday. And I'd say we went at least every other week. And we'd pick up cards. I always remembered I wanted like an ultimate rare. Actually, I don't think it had to be ultimate. I just wanted a Submarine Roid and a Sorcerer of Dark Magic. Those were like two cards I really wanted. I eventually ended up getting them. Naturally, just like anything, you have some people that try to rip the kids off. I'd actually pulled an ultimate rare Uriah from whatever set Uriah came out of. But I traded it for a Mudball Man, Rampart Blaster. And it was one of the times when actually justice was kind of served because the owner of the candle shop made them trade back. And they ended up giving me like a lot of cards for this Uriah. Same thing happened to my cousin. He had pulled like a First Ed Ultra Breaker, the Magical Warrior, out of MFC. And ended up trading it for like nothing, but having to trade back. So then they made a rule where you had to get trades approved before you could trade. And I thought that was, back then I thought that was really dumb because I was like, I can decide what I want. I don't need anyone telling me. I'll trade my GDS Dark Magician for a Scapegoat, but in hindsight, that was a really good rule to have to keep the younger kids from getting ripped off. Probably would have had some of those cards now if I hadn't traded away ultimate rares for graceful dice. But we live and you learn. So we played at the candle shop, card shop, for a long time. And eventually it got broken into. And the losses were just too much. And the candle shop ended up closing. So once again, back in a town without a card shop. I remember going to stores, Walmart, Food Lion, CVS, wherever, and they'd have the Shonen Jump Beckett magazines. Actually, no, it was Pojo magazine, and they always had the coolest covers, and I'd buy those, and it'd have all this really cool gear on the inside that you could buy. All these really cool bags, deck boxes, dice, sleeves, stuff like that. I actually have one somewhere. I need to find it. And then in the back, it had a price guide in the back. It was probably outdated as soon as it hit shelves, but it made me always miss playing Yu-Gi-Oh. So there was a time period from there where I didn't really play Yu-Gi-Oh for a while. It was probably about 2 years, because I don't think I really played in the 7th grade. So around 8th grade, my dad would always go to this flea market down the street from my house. He would sell different things there at this flea market. And one day he wanted me to go with him, and I'm like, oh, Dad, I don't want to wake up early and go to the flea market. But I went anyway. And I was walking around the inside, and they were selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like singles, which was pretty rare, because even the candle shop we had wasn't like just swimming in singles. It was mainly sealed product. But, I go in and I start asking for this. Like, do you have this card? Do you have this card? Do you have this card? And I thought that was so cool, so I'd get these cards, like Elemental Hero Neos and all these cards. And I actually had a Stratos when it was a jump card, because someone at my school knew how much I liked Heroes, and they actually gave it to me. I didn't even know that card was even good. I still don't know what that card was priced at its peak, but I did have one. And so I became pretty familiar with this place, started going every Saturday. I didn't really ever play that much because I just wasn't very good. But eventually, my cousins started going with me. There were a couple kids around there that played, and we'd all play Yu-Gi-Oh! All day long. When it first started out, the flea market card shop, it was just a counter where they just sold cards. You couldn't actually really play. You could play with the owner on the glass tables if they weren't busy, but you couldn't really play. So you had to go outside in the scorching heat or the freezing cold and play on the flea market tables, which we would do. Thank goodness for sleeves. But eventually the interest started showing, and they expanded to where you could actually play and have tournaments and stuff like that. And I always try to think back to what my first real deck was, and I think it was Blue Eyes, like the first deck that actually was 40 some odd cards that actually kind of made sense and sort of worked together to some extent. So I think Blue Eyes was actually my very first deck. And let's see. Sorry, I was texting my girlfriend back. Like I said, this is going to be unedited. But, so we actually started having tournaments there every weekend. And I first started out, I was just playing decks like Neospacians or the Spellcaster Hero deck. And this was my first real introduction to meta. Like I said, I'd kind of gotten beaten down by Cyber Dragon, stuff like that. But that was back in the GOAT, kind of it's a bunch of cards that kind of work together because they're all so strong. And this was my first experience with a deck like Black Wings or a deck like Zombies. Little ways before Edison format, but I was like, whoa, Black Whirlwind's insane, Kalut's insane. All these cards are insane, and what am I doing? I'm over here setting Mystical Elf, hoping I contribute summon Scum and Skull the next turn. It was crazy, and I even remember the Cyber Dragon deck by today's standards was awful, but back then if you just hard open multiple Cyber Dragons and Power Bond, you just won. The game was just so much slower, and it's crazy to think about playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At the flea market. And we had good numbers for a small place, and we had 10 to 15 people every week, which was a big deal when you went from having nowhere to play to all of a sudden having a community of 15 people. It's also where I met some lifetime friends, my friend Austin, My friend Ty, I actually knew him from the candle shop before then. That was a really nice reunion. My friend Cole. I mean, there's too many to name. John Jones, I just had him on a Edison video. My most recent Edison video up to this point was the Lightsworn Mirror. John basically taught me how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! John's the guy that kind of made me be like, hey, I need to stop being bad and actually try to be better. But there's too many to name. People that I ended up making lifetime bonds with. Started out just playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In a flea market. And now we're still playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But we actually have a nice shop. And money. Well, to some extent. But, it's always nice when you're a kid and you have no bills. But we did that for a long time. The flea market was there all up through like 2000 and I'm going to say like 2013. And eventually the interest was there, so they opened up a card shop. An actual storefront. It wasn't in a flea market anymore. It was at the mall, the Mayberry Mall. And we had a storefront again, which was crazy to have a place that sold singles. I mean, they did Yu-Gi-Oh! Singles. That was their main thing. They did a little bit of Magic. They did like some collectible stuff, but the main thing was Yu-Gi-Oh! So we went from having a place we could only play on Saturday and Sunday to a place we could play anytime we wanted, Monday through Sunday. There'd be people there all the time. You could stop in there, get some games in, leave. I'd go by on my lunch break all the time, play some games, watch some games. There was a tournament. Seems like there was a tournament every day at that point there. This was like, so let me back up here for a minute. I got a little ahead of myself. I got a little excited, but I actually took a break from the game it was like when Inzektor and Wind Up were like the best two decks. I never played through those formats. Reason being, I got a girlfriend for the first time, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Took a back seat. Looking back, I should have taken Yu-Gi-Oh!, but that's not important. And I didn't come back until it was like Dragon Ruler format. The first Dragon Ruler format, I believe. It was sometime around like the 2014 era. But, I still kept up with everyone, still kept tabs on everybody, what everyone was doing, where they were, what the game was doing. So when I did decide to get back in, it was really refreshing to be able to go to a place with a storefront. So now we're caught up. Now we're to the point where there's a storefront. We can play Yu-Gi-Oh! Anytime we want, 7 days a week if we want to, whatever. So let's get back to where we were. There were always people there. And I'd go by on my lunch break, pick up some cards, play some games. I want to say this was probably the healthiest time of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my history of playing, because we had a whole community. We had probably 30 or more people playing. If you needed a card, someone had it. Like, you did not need TCG Player. If someone didn't have it, the shop had it. If the shop didn't have it, someone had it. It was very rare to use TCG Player. And that's something myself and a lot of others, I think, took advantage of. Or not took advantage of. I think we took it for granted. So, we go there and we start playing, and it wasn't this utopian great card shop. It had its flaws. I'm not going to go super into a detail on here, because I'm not going to slam them, because I actually am still friends with the previous owners, but there was a lot of room for improvement. We'll just leave it at that. There was a lot of room for improvement. And the player base was kind of putting in their input, saying this is what we want, this is how we want things to change, etc., etc. And they didn't really take that into consideration very much. And eventually there was another card shop that opened, Paradise Games, which is still open, in the same mall as this card shop. So naturally, things are a little tense. But in the beginning, they said they weren't going to do Yu-Gi-Oh! They were only going to do Magic, Pokemon. I think Card Fight, Vanguard had just become a thing at this point. Collectibles, video games, stuff like that. So for a little while, there was peace. And everything changed when the Paradise Nation attacked. So they decided, we're going to do Yu-Gi-Oh! And everybody basically picked up their stuff went to the other end of the mall and left a few scragglers over at the old place, which looking back now was a mistake. I wish that we still had that shop in my town, but we wanted to get better. We were better than the old flea market. We wanted something new. We wanted a pro shop, a nice place, and it was that. So for a small period of time, we had 2 card shops in town, and obviously the one that used to be a flea market vendor that opened a storefront, they ended up closing because they couldn't keep up with competition anymore. So we lost our outlet for singles because the new shops, and we're not going to do Yu-Gi-Oh singles. The market's too unpredictable. We're not going to do it. So we sacrificed that for essentially just somewhat nicer of a place to play at, which looking back was not a good trade-off. But nonetheless, we still had a place to play, and this was more of a weekend thing again. So they were hosting events on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and not so much going on during the week. This is also around the time when people are really starting to have lives. They're starting to get into more serious relationships. They're starting to have full-time jobs. So naturally, when things like that start to occur, the player base starts to dwindle. It starts to become more difficult to get groups of people together to be able to play. It just gets harder. So the tournaments weren't quite as large for a while. We were still playing, and eventually, things got sort of back to normal. Started having tournaments again, and everyone was playing. And this is around the 2015 mark. This is like Burning Abyss, Qliphort, Shaddoll format, which was... I really enjoyed that format because I felt like it was the time when all of my friends were like the closest with each other. One of my good friends, Blake, who is a Christian missionary, actually is overseas in Mexico, or he's just in Mexico. You have to disregard. I had a very long day. I'm probably going to say some very stupid things, but he's in Mexico. He's a missionary. Miss that guy. He'll be coming back soon for much longer. But we basically would stay up half the night playtesting Burning Abyss because I was the only believer in Burning Abyss like before it released. So everyone's like at my locals, I'm not going to speak for everyone in the world, but everyone at my locals was all on Shaddoll, Qliphort, even Yangzing to some extent, Satellarknight. And I read the BA cards and I was like, guys, these cards are crazy. They're like, shut up, boy, that deck's not good. And I finally convinced Blake of it, that it's good. And he's like, dude, this is the best deck out of here. This is undoubtedly the most powerful deck because people haven't realized that they're level 3 Dark Fiends. And Tour Guide is just 1 card into Dante. Like, it was insane. So we would stay up late every night testing Burning Abyss. Every night we tested Rank Up Magic, Chaos Force, or it's the one that ranks up by 2, same type of attribute, so you can make Dante into Pleiades. Astral Force, maybe it's Astral Force. We tested that. We tested like Monarchs. We tested things like Enemy Controller. That's when I feel like I was kind of really good at the game. But then, everything came out. The meta got established. It was like a triangle meta, Shaddoll, Qliphort, BA. Then you had like Satellarknight and Yangzing, like somewhere in between there. Just here and there, in and out kind of thing. But that was crazy. That was such a fun format. That brings us up to like YCS Charleston, which was where I was a little at a crossroads of the game. I was a little bored of BA just because I had played so much BA and so much Shaddoll. I was like, I want to play something just different. I just want to play for fun at this YCS. So I decided to play Pure Lightsworn at this event. So this was like, you had multiple charge. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3. You had multiple charge. You had 3 Honest. You had 3 JD. You had 3 Gores, 3 Trag. All these cards have been at 1 for years and years and years. They were at 3. And Lightsworn wasn't great. It didn't really become good until Minerva came out again. But I played Pure Lightsworn at this event. And I think I was 4 spots away from day 2ing. 4 or 5. It was very close from day 2ing with Pure Lightsworn. in 2015. And the games I had at that were insane. So I'll tell you a very quick story here. One game was very down to the wire, and no one played around gores because why would they? But I got hit with a Cleefort disc for 28, 25, 27, however much it is. I think it's 28. But I dropped gores. I dropped gores in defense. I dropped the token in attack position. And he has Cleefort Towers, the big guy. And basically, he I think I actually might have been at 200 because it was a situation where I thought it through, where if I could get him to misplay, I would win. So I put the gores in defense, put the token in attack position. His big towers is 3,000. It's enough to where the attack over the token will kill me. And he goes, attack the token for game, and I triple honest the token because the gores token is a light fairy, not a dark fiend. And this guy's whole demeanor just melts. This man turns pale white. At first he turned pale white, then he turned red as a tomato because he got really mad, but called a judge, told me I couldn't do that, and I was like, why? He's like, that's a dark, and I was like, no, read gores. He wouldn't read gores, and then the judge was like, yeah, it's a light monster. Why would he not be able to honest? And, so that was hilarious. That's a good memory. I don't remember who you are, but if you were playing Cleefort in 2015, I'm the guy that triple honested you at YCS Charleston on a gores token. So, hope you're doing well. That was also the event that BA was taking in Mass Change 2 to make Dark Law, which was pretty cool. But oddly enough, that's the event that Volcanics ended up winning, which was insane. It won YCS, never won anything major like that again. But we all play tested that deck, and I still to this day sometimes I don't know how that guy won that event because that deck was not great. Like, it was not great. It was very much an uphill battle against everything he played against. So still really cool that he won with it. But so that was YCS Charleston. That was 2015. Kind of just didn't really do anything major with the game until about 2016. So around 2016, this is right before Zodiac format comes out. We'll leave that for another video, but right before Maximum Crisis comes out, which is the set I think for me ruined Yu-Gi-Oh, but that's another video, like I said. So this is ABC format, and I went back and forth on decks on what to play because I've always been a rogue player. Even in Edison, I usually play like some kind of rogue deck. I like X-Saber, stuff like that. But I went back and forth on what to play for a while, and my friend Dean Arbuckle was like, I think you should play Herald of Perfection. He's like, I've been playing the deck. Cyber Angel Ben 10's crazy. They just got Ben 10, they got the field spell, all those Cyber Angel cards. And I was like, okay, I'll play it. I'll test this out. I'll see how I like it. So I started playing it, and this deck was wild. I had always liked ritual decks for a long time, and so I was like, I think this is my deck, this format. I don't think it's fantastic, but I think I can make it work. So I did a lot of play testing. I learned that Blue Eyes was the worst matchup because Alternative Dragon could summon itself and just attack over Herald, because it's not an activated effect. So in that matchup, you need to put Herald in attack position and search Honest, and then you're pretty much just chilling at that point. But it was a Concord Regional, and I took Herald, and I was doing pretty good. Round 3, I played against one of my friends, which is always such a terrible feeling. But he looked at me and said, man, I bricked. I don't think I can win. He discards a Ghost Ogre for Galaxy Soldier. Discards another. He can't get the effect. He opened up all of them. Discards another Ghost Ogre to summon the other one. I think he only played 2. Makes an Infinity and passes. And the Infinity, and then he had one more interaction. I think it might have been a third Ghost Ogre. I think his hand was 3 Ogres and 2 Galaxy Soldiers was enough to just win in Game 3 because my opening hand was so bad. And that really disheartened me at that event because for me, it's never really about, like, I don't care if I lose. I just care about if I never had a chance. I never got to play a card. So my confidence was down significantly from that point. But, I had a little bit of a pep talk, and I thought, this is where I was only in this event to get my invite to Nationals. And so I was like, okay, we're going to play this out. We're going to see how this goes. We're going to forget that happened. I end up winning every round the rest of the day. Every round. My last round was against Blue Eyes, against this guy who was just a total prick. I was looking at the pairings, and I saw my table number. I'm like, sweet. I start walking over there. He's already sitting down, and he just pulls out his deck. It was like something out of the cartoon. He pulls out his deck, lifts it up, and the first thing I see is a Blue Eyes. And I was like, okay, well, I'm playing against Blue Eyes. I mean, he's sitting at my table. Why would he take it out? So game one, I win die roll. I go first, and I just make this insane field. There's no Dark Ruler no more at this time. You're not going to beat Harold Christia with 5 in hand. There's just nothing that you can do to beat that. So he scoops. I technically have no idea what he's playing. Technically have no idea what he's playing. Because he tried to hide it. And so he goes first in this game 2, sets up his Blue Eyes field, and I go second. I basically end up clearing his whole field, using Ben 10 to search for Victoria, which is a light fairy. And basically Victoria is a monster reborn for dragons from your opponent's graveyard. And put that in, and I just completely OTK him. And this guy is just so upset, wouldn't shake my hand, walked away from the table and told his friends that I was bad because I sided in Victoria, didn't even know what I was playing against. And I knew it was Blue Eyes the whole time because he basically showcased that he was playing Blue Eyes. So if you play an event and you take your deck out of the table, lay it down. You never know who might walk behind you. I know some people do that, stand behind their opponent, see what they're playing. I don't do that, but if it's there, you're just handing out free information on a silver platter, and then of course I'm going to take it. But I got third place at that. It was a Concord Regional, and that was my first and only regional top 8 up to this point. But I got the playmat. It was a dark Requiem playmat in the deck box, and I rode that train for so long. I felt as if that I was just the best I had ever been at that point in the game. I felt like I was pretty much unstoppable. There was a Spartanburg Regional 3 weeks after that, and I played the same list. I changed 2 things. I put in Advanced Ritual Art and Guantanko Megami, the level 6 fairy vanilla. I don't know its name. That was the only changes I made because I said I want a way to drop Perfection with 1 card. And that was so good because you also played Stick Chair in that build. So you can make Herald, you can use your extenders to make Daigusto Emerald, then bring back the fairy and make a rank 6, which was just so strong. And kind of started off the same way. I won the first 3 rounds very easily, and I ended up playing against a guy in round 4 that I unfortunately had played against at the Concord Regional a couple weeks before, and he knew what I was playing, and he had already picked up on it, and I ended up losing to him in game 3. He was playing, I think it was Metal Foe Magispector, I think. No, it was Magispector Yang Zing. Yeah, Magispector Yang... Metal Foe Yang Zing. Okay, I'll get it right here in a second. Metal Foe Yang Zing, game 3, very, very close. And then unfortunately from there I just started losing. But I always say that if Vanity's Emptiness had been banned that list, it got banned the next list, that I would have top 8'd that event too, because that was the only card that I started losing to, was people just hard drawing the 1 Emptiness. But the deck was fire, yet again. Love me some Herald of Perfection. Never played Drytron. A lot of people always ask me why I didn't, because it does seem up my alley. Just never did. Diviner of the Herald is easily one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh cards in the game. Very, very beautiful card. I love the art on that card. So maybe one of these days I'll play that card in something again. because I've always wanted to play Diviner and something. I wanted to get a play set of like foreign secrets. I feel like it would look so nice. But so it was 2015. The deck profile is still on House of Champs channel. Yeah, definitely check it out. Side decked a DD Dynamite because everyone was on Desires. So that was kind of funny. Ended up DD Dynamiting a few people that day. So from there, we go into like the Pepe format, which was the only Pendulum deck I ever played and the only Pendulum deck I ever liked. So let me actually show you guys something here. Darn it. Hold on. I have something pretty amazing to show you. I didn't initially think about showing these, but since we've gotten to this point, I guess I will. So, Pendulum format, 2015, Tier 0 Performa Pal Pendulum, Pepe. So, at this point in the game, I really wanted to continue kind of playing the best deck. And Performa Pal Pendulum Sorcerers were over $100 a piece. Infinity was close to $100. This is a very expensive deck. So I just pretty much said I'm never going to be able to play this. I'm going to have to play Domain Monarchs like everyone else. But the friend that owns the flea market card shop needed a ride to work. So, because their car had broke down. So it was a man, his wife. His wife needed a ride to work because the husband had to work. So I was like, okay, I'll take you to work. Just buy me some Yu-Gi-Oh packs. They lived in Galax, which is probably 30 minutes from me. She worked at Walmart. So I was like, when we get there, just buy me 5 packs. So we get there. She buys me 5 packs. She's like, thanks. Here's your gas money. I'm like, sweet, cool. Thank you. I go out to my car and I open up the first pack. It's nothing. It's 5 blister packs of Breakers of Shadow. Nothing. Second pack. Nothing. At this point, I'm just like, this is awful. Whatever. I get ready to just throw the other packs in like the back because I'm so disappointed. And I'm like, whatever, I'll just open them. The next pack, Pendulum Sorcerer. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. But I'll never be able to get the rest of the deck. I was working part-time hours, and we're going to backtrack a little bit here in a second, but because I missed a very important part because I was so excited to pull these cards out. But second pack, Pendulum Sorcerer. I've pulled 2 Pendulum Sorcerers out of these packs. I'm like, okay, now I have 2. You need 3, but 2's better than 0. So I can play the deck with 2. Last pack was Infinity. And so these are my Pendulum Sorcerers. I did eventually get a third one, but I still have them. And this was at a time where everyone wanted foreign, so I ended up swapping. These aren't the ones that I pulled, but I pretty much relate them to that because I swapped my Englishes for 3 Germans, and I still have them because this just reminds me of when, like, I was supposed to be playing a Yu-Gi-Oh deck that I really want because I love Performa Pals. I love the archetype so much, and something somewhere was really watching out for me to get these things. So here they are. I'll show them to you one more time. They're all 3 first ed. They're the original secrets from Bosch. And I don't really play Pendulum, so I haven't gotten to play them in anything, unfortunately. But I keep hoping that one of these days I will find something that I can play them in again, because I would love to play that card. I played Magispectors like a year ago, just for fun, because it could play that card. And it felt good to use them again. So we're going to backtrack just a little bit here, just a few months. So everything in my life was really good. I really enjoyed Yu-Gi-Oh! This is like the 2014. So we're going to go back a little bit. I apologize for telling this out of order. But I got so hyped about the Pendulum Sorcerers, So 2014... once again, I always enjoyed Lightsworn. So I have all common Lightsworn deck that I'm playing. This is before YCS Charleston. Sometime before. And I'm sitting at my locals, which at this time was still the Dragon's Pen, or the flea market locals, that had a storefront. So this is when they have a storefront. And it's the last round of locals, and my phone rings. And it was my house call from my house. I was like, whatever, it's not important, whatever. And it rang again, and I was like, I'm playing cards, I'll call back later. And it rang again. And at that point, I was like, okay, what's going on? And basically, it was my dad, and he had been having chest pain, so they were taking him to the hospital. So at this point, I'm like, okay, dropping out of the tournament, I'm out. I'm going to go see what's going on, make sure he's okay. So get home, and the ambulance and all the first responders are already here. They take him to the hospital, and they say they think he's had a heart attack, and end up going to the larger hospital about an hour away, and he stayed there for quite some time. I don't remember the exact amount of time, but over a week, until eventually he lost his battle with a septic infection after having a heart attack, and a couple other things went wrong. So this is me at like the hype of my life, and it was just took a complete nosedive. When you're that young and you lose a parent, it gets really hard for a long time, especially when it's someone that was always so interested in the things you were doing, always calling me to see how I did at tournaments while I was there, stuff like that. And it was hard for a long time. Yu-Gi-Oh! Kept me going through that time. My friend Blake, we would talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! While we were in the waiting room at the hospital, keeping my mind off of it. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! The day my dad, his funeral. I went over and played cards with my friends that night for hours. And it wasn't much longer after that was the YCS Charleston. So we're getting caught back up now. But, guys, that was really, really hard at such a young age in my life. So it was 2014. So won't be too much longer, it'll be 10 years ago. But a lot of good memories with my dad. Like I said at the start of this video, him taking me to the candle shop to buy cards anytime that I wanted him to. I was never, a demanding child or a bratty child, but he would just do it because he knew I just loved to go look at those cards so much. He would take me to the flea market every weekend to play cards. He'd let me stay there for hours and play cards. Take me to the other card shop before I could drive. Bought me cards, took me places, done all this stuff, and couldn't have asked for any better of a supporter, any better of a fan than him. But we gotta move on here before I start getting choked up again. So all that happened. End up going to. I got my very first invite, so it's kind of sad. I got my very first Nationals invite with Harpy Ladies of that year, and my dad was alive at that point. He was so happy for me, he didn't know what that meant at all. He acted like he did. He had no idea what that meant, but he was so proud. And then by the time Nationals rolled around, he wasn't here anymore, because I believe that was around January. Was that regional? I got my invite, and he was gone by March. And then in June or July was Nationals. It was when they had it in Detroit. It was my first time being away from home since my dad had died. It was a long way away. Such a long way. I went with my friend Brandon, my friend Kiefer, and my friend Blake, and Brandon's parents on this cross-country trip to Detroit from North Carolina. It was so much fun. Had a great time. Massively scrubbed out of the main event. But we went to a tournament at Jeff Jones' shop the night before, and it was just so much fun. Such a fun trip to be able to do that. So my friend Blake he made day 2 at that Nationals, and the judge told him the wrong time that round 1 started the next day, and we showed up and the next round had ended. So he lost his round by default because we weren't there, because we didn't know. PSA, if you're a judge or if you're Konami watching, you guys got to do something about the audio problems that you have at these big events. I don't know what it is. The judges, I feel like, don't really have like public speaking experience. So like when you speak into a microphone, you don't talk like this because everything in the whole room makes it echo, and it just sounds like. So you're actually supposed to talk very slowly into a microphone, especially if there's a lot of echo or a lot of reverb in the room. So people all the way back at table 500, people like me that are at table 500, can understand what's going on. So that's my rant. That I just think that Konami could do a little bit better with their audio for that. Even at like Nationals this year, 2022 in Chicago, round one, I was at the very last table, naturally, of course, but I could not hear anything what they were saying. Still don't know what they said. Hope it wasn't important. And my only other complaint, I don't know how I'm getting into a Konami rant about right now, but is to get a projector for the clock and project it on the wall so everyone in the whole room can see it and people can't really stand in front of it quite as much. Okay, that's my rant on Konami. Change those things. It'll be great. Please do it. All right, so after that, we get to YCS Charleston 2015. We talk about Volcanics winning. I played Lightsworn. Triple Honest did a Guy Over Gore's token. Now we're at 2017. Still playing Cosmo. I'm playing Cosmo at this point. Dark Destroyers are like 100 plus a piece, but I'm playing that. And the card comes out that I personally think, for me, ruined the game, changed the game, however you want to call it. Some people say Cyber Dragon ruined Yu-Gi-Oh! Or it massively changed Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that Ash Blossom really... It's a fine line between changed and ruined for me, because there was never a time where if I wrote on turn one, I had to ask for a response. Unless they were playing fairies, which was very few and far between, but never had to ask for a response. And I think that's the card that really changed Yu-Gi-Oh! Changed the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! More than anything. Like, it was like Cyber Dragon is like a major mark for me, and then it's like Ash Blossom. But we'll save the rant about that card for another video. But basically, at this point, you know, it's anyone's game. So anybody that has Ash is at a significantly more advantage. You could easily be the worst player in the room and have 3 Ashes, and that be your advantage, because you could stop things other people couldn't stop. And, you know, obviously Ash was necessary for a format with grass. I wish we had D-Shifter back then. But Zodiac format... I didn't really like it. I had Zoo. I thought it was very boring. So I actually mixed Zoo with Draco Pals and called it Zoo Pals. You remember the commercial, if you're like a 90s kid, the Oink, Oink, Zoo Pals, like the little plates with the faces on them. I called it Zoo Pals. And basically it used Duelist Alliance to search for Pendulum Rising, which was like you did Zoo combo, and whenever you chalk a 9 back, you could Pendulum Rising it away into Pendulum Sorcerer, pop 2, search 2. And then also everything in the deck was Earth. And it was very rank 4 oriented, so you could make like you could make King of the Feral Imps to search the X-Saber, so you could make like Nat Beast. You could do like full Zoo combo plus Nat Beast, which was pretty strong against the Pendulum deck. That it came out a few weeks before, like Astrograph, stuff like that. But I tested that deck relentlessly. I played that deck so much. Every locals, top 4, every locals. 20, 25 people for weeks. And when it came time to go to that Chicago Nats, 2017 Chicago Nats, completely scrubbed. Lost every game. Never drew a playable hand. Drew the X-Saber, Brick, drew the... whatever, drew everything I wasn't supposed to draw, to the point where like my one play would be like Barrage, and they'd have Ghost Ogre and I'd have to scoop. So now much has changed. Still drawing hands, only have 1 playable card in them, even though I play 15 to 20, still only drawing 1. But that's kind of my rant with Modern, why I'm only playing Edison right now, because I don't like playing a game where I feel like if I can't play 5 cards in my hand, I should just concede. But that's also for another video. So that was 2017 Nationals in Chicago. And moving away from that, I took another break from the game for a while, all the way up to 2019. So I left the game in like the very end of Zoo format and came back in, Eternal format. So Sky Striker, Salamangreat, Orchist, Thunder Dragon, all these things. And my first regional back, hadn't touched Yu-Gi-Oh! In like 2.5 years. I'd been playing Mermail, because I just loved Mermail, but for this event, I was like, I want to play something crazy. I want to play something no one's going to see coming. So I played Danger Orcus Dark World. And this deck was just insane. When this deck fired off, there was no losing. There was not a single. It played Orcus combo. It played Dark World. It played Dangers. It played all of the Dangers. It played Nessie. It played Snake, Rabbit, Mothman. It was like one of the first ones I saw that played Mothman because it was so good. It was extra Dark World dealings. But I could like make Eradicator. I played the Orcus, the Trumpet, the level 1, the Brass, because you can make use Nessie and Brass to make Savage Dragon. So that was crazy. And round 3, I hadn't lost a game. I had lost to no one. I had beaten every Orcus, the Thunder Dragon, and the Sky Striker, because you also could make Eradicator live very easily. But round 4, I get paired up against Guru. And this was the one I was the most afraid of because I didn't know what the deck did. I went into the event having only really tested against Salamangreat and Sky Striker. I tested against nothing else. And, at this point, I was just like, okay, I just have to play Beatdown. I just need to summon Grapha and just keep attacking. So I win game 1, and I'm feeling really good about this. Really good. Game 2, I lose by a landslide. Like, he opened up like triple Solemn Strike, Judgment. There's no winning through that. Game 3, lots of back and forth action. I really felt as if I was because I had the reoccurring Grapha. So no matter what, every turn I had Grapha. Because as long as he didn't clear the Dark World I summoned before I bounce it, I had Grapha. And I eventually end up drawing Nessie, using Nessie, drawing a card. Something happened at the resolution of that Nessie that really made me break my focus. So after it was done, I drew a card because I did not think I had drawn for Nessie. And unfortunately, instinctively, shuffle my hand. So at this point, no one says anything. Where we start to play another card, and I was like, I just drew an extra card against my opponent, And I was like, I can put the card back. You can call a judge. I was like, I don't expect you to trust me, whatever. So, call a judge, gets ruled as a game loss, unfortunately, because, I admitted to it. I told him what I did. Told him it was completely unintentional. Opponent was fine with it. He knew it was an accident. I'm like, whatever. It's one loss. It's fine. Wouldn't have been as bad if I didn't get paired up against 5 other Guru decks right after that and lost to every one of them because I did not know what the deck did whatsoever. And yeah, that was really sad because it was my one matchup I just hoped I didn't play against, and I played that many because I lost to one. It wasn't a great deck. It was just better than Danger Dark World, and it was very much worse than all the other best decks. So I guess when they got knocked out of like the top tables, that's where I got put playing against them. Wasn't good against the meta, but it was good against me. Once again, story of my life. But so that was my 2019 regional, and then 2020 is when I'm looking at really getting back in the game, like really going to build a deck. Colossus gets banned. I'm like, okay, whatever. Can't play Thunder Dragon now. But I kind of wanted to play it anyway because it was a combo variant with like Titan Control, which I ended up playing for a long time. But obviously, we all know what happened in 2020. Pandemic. The world slowed down. The world stopped. And there's no Yu-Gi-Oh! There's no locals. Nothing. It's all closed down. And I don't have to tell you guys story time about COVID, but I remember finally when the restrictions were sort of light enough, we went to a tournament in South Carolina at my friend's shop, and I played Chaos Thunder. And, this was still very much peak COVID. There were still masks, still people getting sick. And ended up not doing too well with it, just missing the top 4 cut out of probably 20 people. So pretty much no more Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout that. Towards the end of the year, actually I think it was the next year, so 2021 in January, we went back Ended up getting second with Chaos Thunder again. This was like Infernoble format. After they had lost like the Smoke Grenade. Deck was still pretty good for the first few weeks after that. Ended up getting second at that tournament. We actually ended up so I'll tell you a story about that event. Was we went to Florence, South Carolina, so about 3 hours away, and one of my friends had forgot to ask off for work the next day. So we came up with this plan. We're like, okay, it's fun. We'll still go. We'll stay in a hotel about an hour and a half away from home. That way we can still drive back. We get some sleep. We don't have to drive the whole distance. We'll leave early in the morning, come back, you can go to work. Great plan. Till we get out of locals, we have a flat tire. So the hype train from getting second immediately just nosedives into nothing. But the only bad thing, or the only thing worse than a flat tire, is a flat spare. So the spare is flat, or it's significantly underinflated. So it's easily a little more usable than the flat tire. So we put that one on and we limp ourselves to a gas station. We fill it up with air. We're like, oh gosh, we're only going to be able to go 50 miles an hour the whole way. It's 3 hours, or it's like an hour and a half to where we need to go. So we're like, we're going to be up a while. Let's get some food. We go to IHOP. We're at the IHOP over 2 hours because the service was just so poor at this IHOP. Didn't ever think we were going to get our food. By this time, it's like 2 a.m. by the time we finally get out of that IHOP. And then we have to limp all the way to Asheboro from Florence. So it took us about 2 hours because we had 5 people in the car and a trunk full of stuff. We shouldn't have made it. We definitely should not have made it that far, but we did. We get there, and it's the only time I've ever rented a hotel room. Basically for 2 hours worth of sleep. So we were there from about 4 or 5 in the morning to about 6. And we woke up and left and came back to town so he could get to work. Looking back, it's kind of funny, but it was not funny in the moment, having a flat tire 3 hours away from home with five big guys. But we made it back. And, been making memories ever since then. I've been making memories ever since got that Zombria the Dark. And, COVID still messed up Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while, but 2021, around March, I started this channel. And started the channel with the idea of wanting to do it for no reasons more than wanting to have access to memories. So now I can look back on the channel and just see all these things that I've done since making this channel. All the case tournaments, all the traveling, the regionals, going to Vegas earlier this year. All these really cool things that I could easily have forgotten about. They're all archived here on this channel. And that was the main thing it was about. And starting to play Dark Magician at a time where no one believed in that deck. And I still feel like I pioneered the Mobilize, Engage, and Hornet drones into Verte, into Dark Magician, because if you did it before me, please let me know, because I'll give you full credit. But to my knowledge, I think I'm the first one that did that. And that really changed the way that deck worked. And I played the heck out of that deck for so long, until I finally got kind of tired of it. And I picked up Heroes, another deck that I had loved, and I ended up getting 8th place at a 100-person case event in Las Vegas earlier this year with Heroes. And I always keep saying I'm going to keep saving this for another video, which I will, but over the past few months I have just really grown to dislike Modern, and we'll get into those reasons at another time. But I've since stepped away for a while, taking a break, playing a lot of Edison format, and really enjoying that. But like I said in the video I made yesterday, I did actually go to a regional playing Crystal Beast. Crystal Beast is actually one of my favorite decks of all time. I just never really talked about it much because I never thought it would actually be given support good enough to play. And I want to make a video specifically on Crystal Beast soon, but it's why, in my opinion, Crystal Beast will never get another good monster, because that deck, with the consistency and the power spells and traps that deck has, would be tier 0 to tier 1 very easily if they actually got monsters that weren't bad. Like Sapphire Pegasus is good. Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon, it's good. Ruby Carbuncle, it's in the middle somewhere. It's pretty good when it's good, it's bad when it's bad. All the other ones, terrible. Not good at all. Even the Advanced Crystal Beast, awful. But all their spells and trap cards, like, when I first read Rainbow Bridge of the Heart, I was like, is this fan-made? Like, this card's insane. Like, pop a Crystal Beast to search. It goes to the back row. It gives me an extra normal and lets me bounce cards. Like, this card's absolutely insane. And then Crystal Miracle, Counter Trap, and the Awakening of the Crystal Ultimates that basically kind of like retconned a lot of the old support into these new cards. So, Crystal Beast, I actually have the deck right here. This is the only thing that's actually keeping me like even somewhat invested into the modern game whatsoever. Because before this deck came out, I basically didn't really have a lot of modern cards. Like, here's I have the Speed Duel. It's glaring. Speed Duel Sapphire Pegasus. Yeah, this is what I played at the Greenville Regional last weekend because I love Crystal Beast. But that's my modern deck right now. Until I feel like the game's not in an awful place anymore, and then maybe I'll come back to modern. But guys, I wanted this to be right around the hour mark for about an hour and 6 minutes, so pretty good time to tell a whole Yu-Gi-Oh story. Maybe one night soon we'll have some of my friends on. We can all talk about our own individual Yu-Gi-Oh stories. But yeah, that's my story from beginning to now, and how I feel like in a lot of ways Yu-Gi-Oh has kept me going over the years. It definitely kept me out of a lot of dark places by connecting me to a lot of good people and making me a lot of connections that have lasted my whole life. So hope you guys have enjoyed this. I felt like this was appropriate for a 100th video for the channel. And yeah, I'll have more content coming soon. I'm going to do some more modern content with Crystal Beast. And I'm going to do lots of Edison duels, Edison deck profiles. Still want to profile you guys my Edison Lightsworn deck I've been working on. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be coming soon. And I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of video, and I hope you enjoyed my story. If you have a link to your own Yu-Gi-Oh story video, please put in the comments below. I'd love to watch it. I was listening to Fraser Smith's podcast earlier today with Cordero, Vexcus, Spencer, talking about how like they met each other and how they started playing Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff like that. It's so fascinating to me how this game, everyone's beginnings are very similar, and it's very cool. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. This is Mike from Dark Magical Gaming, signing out until the next one. Dark Magical Gaming video number 101 will be coming up soon. Take care, everybody.